Hello, carnivore hunters. I wanted to share with you guys some of the things that I learned from quitting hunting, actually. So, these are some things that I learned not only about myself, but some things I learned about human nature in general. But before I get into that, first I just kind of go over why I quit hunting in the first place. So several years ago, it just really started with getting older, having a job, leaving for the Navy, moving out of state. And when I finally did move back to Colorado, my brother had gotten in the habit of he was hunting with other people. My dad really wasn't hunting very much at that time. So the group that I had traditionally hunted with were had kind of broken up a little bit. Um, and then, of course, I had a family. My wife and I have five kids. The first three are girls, and you just kind of get caught up in, going to tennis matches and coaching volleyball teams, and just in general having limited vacation time to play with as well, right? So, eventually my brother and my dad did start hunting together again, and they were doing that for a few years. And then about 6 years ago, my brother asked if I wanted to go with him, and I immediately said yes, and even bought a license for that year. But as luck would have it, I ended up getting a job offer out of state in Alaska. And I moved up to Alaska while my wife and my son stayed here in Colorado so that my son could finish high school. And, when you're living separately from your spouse and only seeing each other every 3 or 4 weeks or so, um, taking any of your vacation time to not spend that time with your wife is basically suicide. So, um, my self-preservation instincts would not allow me to hunt during that time. But fast forward a couple of years and COVID hit, and I, like a lot of other people, ended up getting laid off during that time, which freed up a lot of time for me. And of course, I was back in Colorado after being laid off. Um, but I was able to get in on that hunt plan again. And that's really at this point it's only a few years ago. And I have to tell you that when I did make that commitment to going back, I really actually started to get pretty apprehensive about the whole thing. But it's kind of that apprehension that I got that gives me a much better understanding of non-hunters and their aversion to hunting at all. I mean, sure, I did grow up hunting for several years, but I had stopped for nearly 25 years. And to be honest, the thought of field dressing an animal again, I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it. It had just been so long, I didn't even remember how to do it really. So you kind of come to this realization, at least I realized, how sterilized our society is. We're so removed from what people would consider to be the gross parts of life. Most of us never will see where our food really comes from, how it was harvested or any of that. Most people just stop by the grocery store and find our meat wrapped in plastic. Um, but back to my apprehension. Um, that first year back, when the time did come to field dress that first deer, uh, I have to say, for those of you who have never done it, your imagination is far, far worse than reality. When you're there and you're in that moment, things do not look too much different than they do in the with the meat on the shelf at the grocery store. The other thing is, as a society, I think people have lost that spiritual connection to their food, and I think some of us, myself included, have tried to replace what we lost with that connection by being foodies, right? But using food as an art form is not really the same thing as having a deep connection with your food. And what I mean by that deep connection is, when I was younger, I remember hearing that Native Americans had this deep connection to the bison, right? And I think that some even had a belief that by eating the animal, they were taking on its strengths. And that feeling, it's that connection. That's what you have when you hunt for your own food. Um, you know, now I'm not saying that everyone should hunt. That just wouldn't be sustainable for everybody to jump into it. But what I am saying is, if you're curious but maybe a bit apprehensive because you're not sure how you would handle it, um, give it a shot. the barrier to entry to this is only going to seem harder as you get older. And if you have someone in your life who can act as a mentor, hit them up. Most of us are more than willing to show friends and family, help them experience this for the first time. If you don't have anyone like that who's already hunting, there's plenty of organizations out there that can get people started on hunting. Or if you have the money, hire an outfitter to get you out. I really can't overstate how much an experienced or even professional hunter who's going to be already familiar with the land will just be that can just be an amazing resource for you. Um, I would say though, when you are planning, keep it to fair chase style hunting on public or even private land. But keeping that fair chase method of hunting to me is far more important, and it's more natural than doing like farmed hunts. And to me, farmed hunts aren't even really hunting, in my opinion. I'm not going to disparage anyone else's business, but y- farmed hunts are where chronic wasting disease started in deer, and it started here in Colorado, where in areas where they farm deer, and they were had too many of them living in too close a quarters, and that's where they believe chronic wasting disease started. But even if you only end up hunting one time and you find out it's not for you, you're going to learn something about yourself. So, get out there and give it a shot if you're curious about it at all. And that's it for me for today, guys. I wanted to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And who knows, maybe one day we're going to see you guys on the mountain. Have a good one.